What the hell does the future hold in store for us? No matter what time frame we're living in, the world just seems to get crazier and crazier and more dramatic. And given the uncertain nature of things, this scares people. And they wonder what the heck is ahead of us. Terrifies them. Quite honestly, I'm optimistic. I think long term, our future is going to be just fine. Granted, that doesn't mean it won't get rockier before it gets better. I do think it will be a bumpy ride, but eventually I'm optimistic about what the future holds. What brought this to mind was a conversation I was having recently, and the person I was talking to simply asked me, what do I think is in store for us? What do I think the future is going to be like? And my mind instantly went to thinking about the younger generations. Because if we're talking longer term, 5, 10, 20 plus years, it's not going to be the boomers or the Gen Xers that are going to take the reins and build that future. It's going to be the Gen Zers and Gen Alpha. I'm mid-millennial and mid-30s. And even my age group, we're still young-ish and will be involved in building that long-term future. But it's really the younger generations, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and even younger. So that's why my mind went to, what is the potential? Where are the young ones at? The teenagers and the young 20-year-olds, and are they going to be able to build a better world for us? Where are they at? How are they developing, and what is their potential for the future? And in my experience with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, the young 20-year-olds and the teenagers, preteens, I think that they're going to be just fine. Now, this might run contrary to some belief. People think, oh, Gen Z, they're just a bunch of retards sitting there addicted to their phones, getting brainwashed by the liberals. But again, personal experience and then listening to others with personal experience of the younger generations, they seem like they're doing all right. In large part, a lot of these kids in their 20s and teens, they're rejecting establishment bullshit. You can point to surveys and polls, or you can just go talk to them and interact with them. In large part, they're rejecting all the establishment bullshit. Just look at the surveys of like teenage guys and guys under 25 or 28. They're rejecting left-wing propaganda en masse. And what makes me hopeful is they're also rejecting a lot of the like mainstream conservative bullshit too. They're deciding to really question authority no matter where that authority comes from. That's probably the main thing that gives me hope. You know, I was listening to one of those Sean Ryan podcasts. This one was particularly interesting. It was a former Navy SEAL commander. His name was Captain Brad Geary, I think. And at one point, he was the commander of Navy SEAL training, of BUDS training. So he had a lot of experience with Gen Zers coming into the Navy SEAL training pipeline and seeing how they handled stress, how they handled competition, their potential, how they developed themselves. And there were some issues. There's definitely some issues with Gen Z, Gen Alpha, but there are traits they have that are unique to them that the boomers don't have. One of those traits that Gen Z, Gen Alpha has, that Captain Brad Geary was talking about, that I have experience in dealing with the younger generations, that I've noticed as well, that I agree, in that one of their issues is they don't handle criticism well. But not getting mad at those that criticize them. They're very self-deprecating. They're very hard on themselves. When they get criticism, even if it's constructive, they start feeling like failures. That's one issue that we have to work with the younger generations. But one big positive potential they have is that not trusting authority. And that's what Navy SEAL commander experienced as well, in that a lot of his recruits, If they got bullshit orders, they were not scared to question those bullshit orders. And I really like that with Gen Z. And with working with them and talking to them, I've experienced this too. So they're going to be out there 5, 10, 20 years down the line, just not giving a shit. Whether it's the government, whether it's some church, whether it's some politician or celebrity or whoever, they're not going to give a shit about trust the experts, trust the science, trust the authority. They'll outright question it. And they won't have a problem going out on their own and not caving into that social consensus of needing to believe the narrative. So that's one thing that gives me hope about the future. It's one thing that came to mind when I was asked that question, is experiences with those younger generations and how they just don't give a shit about authority, which is a great thing. They're also very technologically savvy. These Gen Z, Gen Alpha kids, I mean, they grew up with technology. So they're able to identify, say, scam AI videos or bullshit scams on the internet. They're able to identify when something might be wrong and not afraid to question it. Now, that's the thing where, like, the boomers have a tough time understanding Gen Z. And this is where I think the millennials are important, because they're going to be the bridge between the older Gen X boomers and these younger generations. But that's where the older Gen X boomers have a difficult time kind of understanding the young gens, is that the young gens grew up with tech. They grew up with the internet. I didn't. I remember AOL dial-up. I still had a rotary phone when I was a kid. I remember doing all that just to dial a number. But the millennials got internet semi-young, teen years, late teens, so we kind of understand, for the most part, how to work with it. But, you know, those boomers grew up, just trust the experts, trust authority, trust what the teacher or the religion or the government said, and they have a very difficult time with the internet. So given that they have a difficult time working technology, they tend to fall for clickbait, scams, and AI videos on the internet. The Facebook posts, a lot easier. But these Gen Zers, these Gen Alpha-ers, they know how to work the tech. They know how to spot scams on the internet, for the most part. And they have no problem questioning authority. So if we can take those traits, develop them, get them to continue questioning, but not be so hard on themselves when they fail, and look at the fact that they are, through surveys and polls and all that, they're rejecting establishment BS, I have a lot of hope for the future. Granted, it will be rocky with the younger generations, because there seems to be a split by demographic, particularly through gender. A lot of males in Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they are standing out on their own, rejecting establishment BS and moving away from caring about celebrities and caring about all that stuff, which is good. But it's the females that, females, social creatures, females are more so. So they're moving more toward establishment, got to do what everybody else is doing sort of mindset. So it'll be a little weird. It'll be interesting to see how those younger generations, I think over time that will smooth out, that'll even out. The females will realize that, I'm just doing what TV celebrity says. I shouldn't be doing that. But it'll be up to those males to lead, and lead responsibly. But, long-term time frame, 10, 20 plus years, I think we'll be okay. I do. It's going to be up to those younger generations, and they have a lot of positive traits that, if they harness them properly, will build quite the world for us. But it'll be important to help them develop that. Not just be mad because generation's different. And there's constant, the powers that be, they pit skin color versus skin color. They pit religion versus religion. This is another psyop that I think they puppet string us with to just divide society through, and that is generational hate. So I remember growing up when I was a teenager, the boomers just hated the millennials, and there was just constant hate between them. And then millennials blame the boomers for destroying the planet and all this shit. It's like, we've all been fucked. We've all been misled, and it's not one generation's fault or another, but it's constant infighting between all of them. So we need to, not be in denial of our faults and take responsibility for what our respective age group did and for how we failed, but also understand our positive traits, our potentials, and help to develop those and utilize those. So the boomers have a lot of positive traits. They grew up in a world without technology, so they're more self-reliant. They can handle criticism better. But the young generations, they know tech, can't handle the criticism. Although I do hear the young kids playing video games, and I remember the old days of the Call of Duty chat rooms and just letting curse words fly and all that stuff, and it built character. And then for like 10, 15 years, we had to create the safe spaces, and you can't say the mean things to each other anymore. But in like the real young kids, I'm talking 12-year-olds, teenagers, like they're talking shit in video games again. They're not caring about the safe spaces and all that. So I do think, there's some problems. There's some things with the younger generations we're going to have to work with them with to build that character. But they've got a lot of positive traits, positive potential. And the young ones can learn from the old seasoned folks out there, some of that self-reliance. But the old seasoned folks can learn from the young ones and how to move fast in our exponentially developing world, how to utilize the technology, how to spot the scams, how to question authority. So that's pretty much what we're going to have to do going forward. I've got hope. I've got faith. We'll see how it all fleshes out from here.